What do you think about Sandfall Interactive in terms of how they react to the praise they get, in terms of quality of the game and how they did it with such low dev numbers? I actually have so much respect for Sandfall games. I think the way in which they've handled pretty much everything has been phenomenally professional. They've not allowed themselves to get dragged into any of the culture war bullshit, even though there were some people trying to drag them into it. Instead, they've been incredibly humble, which is beautiful to see, because they kind of remind me in this way of Larian Studios. Because Larian was exactly the same. When Baldur's Gate 3 went as nuclear as it did, Larian didn't suddenly become these giant schmucks, right? They were just so grateful for the support and the love that the gaming community gave them. And I think that's amazing, right? I think that's super awesome. And I see the same thing from the guys at Sandfall. They genuinely appear to just be blown away by the love that players have shown them. As for the low dev numbers, I did see something funny. Who was it? It's one of the mainstream truth sayers that said people should stop lying. The dev numbers, Expedition 33 wasn't just made with 30 developers. And then they go on to show how of the developers, so there's 30 people that work for Sandfall, but then there's they made use of a Korean animator studio that had 8 people in that studio that worked on that game. And then they also include the choirs and stuff for the music compositions. So they include like a bunch of choir people, and there were multiple choirs as well as multiple orchestras that made the music. And the mainstream truth sayers was like, really, this game is more like 60 people that worked on the game. And I was like, Don't get me wrong. I think people who sing in choirs for games should be, but why are you trying to take away from the magnificence of this game? The majority of the game was still made by 30 people. So I don't know what the hell you're talking about. But yeah, even at 60, that's still like, what, 4, 5, 6, 7 times smaller than most AAA studios, right? So even at 60, that's still insane. The thing is, right? You are correct. Musicians and VAs are people who also made the game. But while that is phenomenal, right? The actual technical part of the game, the thing that everyone is sort of praising, the gameplay, the look, the feel of the game, that isn't VA or the music guys or anything. That's just the technical studio side of things. So to try and pretend like it's not as cool because it wasn't just 30 people, it's sort of like, well, actually, hold up. It was just 30 people. The actual core of the game was just 30 people. The things that came on that's also super awesome, right? And also amazing, that came on later, but the core was still just 30 people. Go Carnage, interview the 2 leaders of Sandfall team. Was it in English or in French, Nyara? No. The whole team. So when you include the VA, the choir, the composers and everything, the entire team is about 60 people. All in all. That was the article's point, was that the actual credits show about 60 people in the credits. By the way, what is your opinion on the election of the new pope? Ramifications for the rest of the Christian communities? So Rockon, I have no idea, right? I don't even know who the new pope is, or if they've even elected another pope. I'm not Catholic, so who the next pope is have zero effect on me, right? And what I do or don't do. So I genuinely don't care. I couldn't care less. I hope that the next pope isn't as woke as the last one. I guess I'll say that. Still cool. They use real actors and face scanned as they acted out each scene. It's very well done. Very, very well done. In English, Code doesn't speak French. Steven, you don't know. If the French had their way, everyone would be speaking French. So, gotta ask. Obi-Wan, how you doing, brother? Dude, I would go so far as to say, even at 100 developers, a game like that would be kind of wild. Right? Even if I told you that Clair Expedition was made by 100 people, all of us would be like, whoa. Shit. Okay, just 100 people? How do I know this? Because Baldur's Gate was made by 350 people. And everyone at the time, myself included, was going, how is it possible that all of these large AAA studios are telling us you cannot compare us to Larian Studios? Larian Studios is a large studio with a shit ton of money. What they did was a once-in-a-lifetime thing. And we were like, dude, they have the same amount of employees that you guys have. They don't have your budgets. What the hell are you talking about? Because I remember at the time there were Ubisoft developers that were saying, you can't judge us based on Larian Studios and Baldur's Gate 3. That's not how it's supposed to work. So it's Black. They also then spoke about the IP and that it's the D&D IP and that no other game can compete. But that wasn't the only excuse. There were a number of excuses. The D&D IP was the least of the bothersome excuses. Because at least there you could say, well, yeah, true. Not everyone has the D&D IP, right? That is absolutely true. But fundamentally, it's that was not their only excuse. I remember because we covered it at the time, specifically on my WoW channel, because it was a WoW developer that sort of went off the rails and started to pretend like no other studio can match the budget that Larian Studios had for the game. And no other studio would be able to pull it off. So people shouldn't compare us to Larian Studios. And I was like, what do you mean? Like, if we're talking about studio sizes, you guys have more people. If we're talking about money, you guys have more money. This is obvious bullshit. Just obvious bullshit. I'm looking forward to the movie. Did you guys hear that? Sony actually approached the creators of Clair Obscure, Sandfall. Apparently, Sony wants to make a movie about Clair Obscure, which, in my opinion, it would be a good movie. It would be a really good movie if that actually happened. So yeah, I'm very excited for that. I would definitely go watch that just because the lore of the game is absolutely insane. I don't believe they can make the movie without massive wokeification. Maybe not, but we have to also wait and see. Remember, things are starting to change, right? Things are starting to change. It's taking time, but I think a big reason why it's not immediately noticeable, and I absolutely understand that, right? For a lot of people, it just won't immediately be noticeable, is because a lot of the things you're seeing now will only sort of, or already started during the height of the woke era. So if you're thinking, for example, about movies, a lot of the movies that you're seeing today were already in filming 3 years ago, if not longer ago, because it can sometimes take up to 5 years for a movie to be made. So, I'm talking from like the first inception of it, the writing of it, and then finally the actual funding and all the rest of it can take a long time. So we're going to see the changes, if changes are indeed coming. We're only going to see those changes in maybe, 4 or 5 years from now. We'll finally start to see some shows and movies and stuff come out that isn't necessarily as woke. But I do think there's a better chance now that we see, Logan, how you doing, brother? That we see stories come out that isn't necessarily as woke. It's not zero. There's still going to be woke stories, obviously, right? That's just the nature of the beast. That's there's still a lot of people in the industry that are activists and that want their activism. And for a lot of companies, they will obviously ride the wave all the way down to destruction, right? Like, regardless, they just won't care. So yeah, you're gonna have to wait and see.